Good afternoon, everyone. I guess afternoon, at least on the East Coast.
Right.
Welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Monday, July 3rd. Coram and Justin Nielsen here with a breakdown of the action in today's shortened trading session before the July 4th holiday. And the major indexes managed to eke out some mild gains today.
Yeah, it was not too much happening, a little bit of back and forth action, but overall, what was positive is that we had the advancers certainly trumping the decliners. And since I'm just back from vacation for a couple weeks, we're going to use a travel theme today, including Airbnb, Expedia, and Visa, because you got to pay for that stuff somehow.
Exactly. So, very thematic given that you're just coming back from a trip of your own. And we're starting to see leadership brought into these non-tech areas, so definitely worth taking a look at. First, let's take a look at the major indexes. The Nasdaq today up 0.2%. The S&P 500 up 0.1% today. The Dow slightly in the green, and we also had the Russell 2000 up about 0.4% or so heading into this early close. So we had a strong day on Friday that warranted boosting exposure to 80 to 100%. Justin, talk to us about where we're at.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is that we've had such a strong rally really since May. We kind of had that pause after a strong January, a little bit of a pause between February, March, and April, and then May. I mean, we were just ramping right back up again. And what I really liked was how much more broad-based this was. January was broad too, but we really saw kind of a divergence. We kept on focusing on the equal weighted versus the market cap weighted indexes because there was such a divergence, especially after the banking crisis happened in
Right.
March. So it really seemed like
Mhm.
things started getting back to normal in May. And we were a little concerned that things were getting extended a couple weeks ago, and we had a pullback. But the fact that we held above the 21-day moving average line on the Nasdaq Composite, I think, was a positive.
Right.
And we came right back pretty strongly. So the biggest question right now is, are we going to be getting extended again? You see that the 50-day moving average line has had a chance to catch up a little bit, but we are seeing a little bit more of that, especially after Friday, a little bit more of that extension above the line. So I would say today's action was kind of ideal. We had a strong Friday, gap up, and we held the gains for the most part today. And that's exactly what you want to see. Plus, it lets that line kind of catch up a little bit.
Exactly. So, in terms of boosting exposure with the NASDAQ stretched, with leading tech stocks, a lot of them either stretched or maybe even a little bit extended from some shorter term aggressive moving averages as of late, it seems like looking outside of the tech sector is worthwhile for looking for stock ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things we talked about on IBD Live this morning, as we were going through the industry group spreadsheets, there's a lot of areas. Just looking at the Growth 250, you've got industrial, electronic, equipment. You've got the building, including the residential, commercial. There's a lot of areas outside of tech that are really filling up the spots in our Growth 250 index. So there's a lot of spaces that you can be looking at. We're going to look at travel today. But you can certainly broaden out. And remember that when we move from 60 to 80 to 100, it's not that you have to do all of that in a
Yep.
single day. The idea is that these should be gradual movements that you're making in your portfolio. And sometimes that's a matter of not necessarily buying new stocks, but maybe adding to some of the positions that you currently have.
Well said. Let's now take a look at the S&P 500, which pulled back and bounced, and last week cleared its high from 616, and the S&P held its strong gain in today's trade too.
Yeah, another one where you just, you came down to that 21-day moving average line, didn't even breach it. So it's really holding up well. And just as you said, Ali, you got that strong Friday, and you really didn't give up any ground. Really tight action today. Again, it's a shortened day.
Yeah.
A lot of people are probably taking advantage of, oh, why come in on Monday when I can just take a little bit of an extended holiday? But it's nice action to see. And as you mentioned, it's clearing that previous high. So it looks like things are firing on all cylinders.
And we want to take a look at the Dow. So here's 0DJIA bouncing off of its 50-day line last week, also holding its gain here, Justin. Not the leading index, but
Right.
great to see it bouncing back after touching that 50-day line, which we really would not have wanted to see it break below that level in a
Mhm.
significant way.
And at this point, I don't need the Dow to be leading. It's I'm fine with the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 doing the heavy lifting, but I like that the Dow is participating. It's not being
Yeah.
completely left in the dust. It's not this big divergence. The biggest divergence that you see is with the relative strength line, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the S&P and the Nasdaq, taking the leading. The leading positions here. The fact that it's just not getting destroyed and holding, as you mentioned, at the 50-day moving average line, I think
Mhm.
is a positive.
And the Russell 2000, which is tracked by the IWM ETF, it too is bouncing back in a strong way after nearly retracing its strong gains from early in June. So it is now on the verge of a breakout.
Yeah, and not only was it, it's funny how a lot of times these areas of support will kind of coincide. So you've got that really great line that you drew right around 180, where we found support, and that just so happened to be right there at the 200-day moving average line. So you've
Right.
got two areas of really nice, support levels, and this is forming a pattern. Like, we normally aren't looking at the indexes and looking for patterns, because a lot of times that follow through day will get us in
Mhm.
so much earlier than looking for a cup with handle, for instance. But when we see a pattern, it's not something we ignore. That's something that we
Right.
do look at as a positive. So I
Mhm.
think that's something definitely to be keeping in mind there.
Yes, especially as participation broadens. I mean, that could include small cap stocks. We know that there are periods where those stocks can really kick things up a notch. So now let's take a look at TBT. This it moves in line with the 10-year yield. Your thoughts on what we're seeing here?
Yeah, so this is actually kind of short the 20-year bonds, and we pay a lot of attention to the 10-year, which is 0TNX if you're in the MarketSmith
Hmm.
platform. This is ultra short, the TBT. So you will see a little bit of a disconnect sometimes, because when you're dealing with leveraged ETFs, you can have
Right.
them acting differently at their moving averages. And remember, this is a 20-year versus 10-year, but the
Right.
overall sense is very similar. And what you can find sometimes is, with the markets as strong as they are, sometimes it's nice to have these on as almost like a little bit of a hedge, because if the market does pull back, sometimes it's going to be because of in increases in the interest rates. So that's one of the reasons why we have this on Swing Trader right now, as a little bit of a hedge there. and
Hmm.
and that did have a pretty strong day today, as did 0TNX.
So if we see it clear this trend line area and come up to the 200-day line, do you think that that would warrant boosting exposure in a trade like this, Justin?
You could, and I mean, that was one of the reasons why we put it on Swing Trader. You see that we kind of crossed that line last week, and then we came down. Now, look, Friday was such a strong day, so the idea is, okay, you might be down on this, but you're up on your other things, right?
Yeah.
On the flip side, on a day where you might be down on your other things, you might be up on this. That's the way a hedge works. Now, the downside of that is that you're going to get possibly lower performance than if you had been all in on the direction that the market is going. But if you're wrong, this is a way to kind of make sure you're not very wrong. It just
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
eases the pressure off a little bit.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Now let's take a look at RSP and QQEW. So here is RSP, an outside day today, reversing higher, up about 0.25%. And it's on the verge of clearing its high from mid month last month. And then QQEW, Justin, up today by about 0.4%, continuing its bounce off of the 21-day.
Yeah, and that RSP that looked a little funny to me. That might have been
Some sort of
a bad
rebalancing
price
or
there, because I
flat
didn't.
bar.
Yeah, I didn't see that kind of
Okay.
happen real time. It looked a little bit tighter to me. The main point I wanted to make is that the advancers versus decliners,
Mm.
well in favor of the advancers, not huge in a huge way, but certainly favoring the advancers. And so both RSP and QQEW outperformed their their indexes, their market cap weighted uh, colleagues. And so that's what I wanted to point out here, is that again, the broad-based nature. One of the things, and maybe we can try it and see if it works better than what it did on IBD Live, but the GMIAB that we were looking at earlier, this 10-day moving average line on that. Now it's still not working properly, but it's definitely, you can see that it's crossed this trend of the 10-day moving average line. And on the GMIAB, the Nasdaq, you could even just draw the line and see that it did cross that on Friday and is going to probably continue higher today.
Mhm. Good stuff there, Justin. All right, a couple of sector and thematic ETFs to get through before we take a look at those individual stocks. So here's a look at XLI. Last week had a really nice week, up almost 4%, and is holding that gain here. So it seems like this is one of those non-tech areas to be looking.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been strong for a while. It really hasn't given up. And as we were talking about on IBD Live this morning, there's a lot of areas in the Growth 250 that are represented by general industrial, electronic equipment, and so on, that this falls under. So XLI is the industrials. This is an area to just keep your eye on.
Another one, XHB. This is the home builders continuing to move out.
Yeah, I think that chart just speaks for itself. These have been so strong. No matter what you thought of the home builders, as interest rates were, skyrocketing, the home builders have said, "Look, we're going up," and that's continued. And that also is another area where it's heavily represented in the Growth 250.
Yeah. And speaking of the travel theme, let's take a look at two travel related ETFs. Here's Jets, which tracks the airlines, and those have started to move out in a big way, Justin.
Yeah, a lot of false starts initially. I mean, if you look at the weekly,
Yeah.
there were so many times where we were like, okay, here come the travel stocks, and they just, look like they would break out and then fall right back. This one, look, we've now put a lot of room, a lot of price action above the 40-week moving average line. So this one looks a little bit more likely to stick, and we're seeing, not only the smaller regional, the Ryanairs and the Copas and Alaska Air and things like that, but we're also seeing the big guys like Delta Airlines and and the like of that are also performing very well now.
hmm And maybe for traders who missed the airline stocks, there's other travel related names that they can look at, and we'll get to a couple of them. But OOTO, out of the office, love this
Yeah.
ticker. Uh, it's come up off of the 200, not the 200-day. What am I trying to say? The 21-day. It breached it just for a couple of days and then bounced strongly. Had a good day today.
Yeah, and
Maybe
and that's
Airbnb in there, and it's a leveraged ETF, of course.
Yeah, it is a leveraged ETF, but there were a lot of stocks as I was looking early on. We were looking at stocks on IBD Live and like TSM and ASML. There were a few stocks that were, looking a little bit stronger earlier, but then they seemed to reverse and pull back intraday. So a lot of times, what I do is I'll look. I'll use Market Smith and I'll sort by the daily range.
Mm,
Where is it at in relation to its closing range right now? And the travel stocks really stuck out to me today as having a lot of names that were in the upper part of their range as opposed to the lower. Because look, you can have the advancers trumping the decliners, but just because it's up doesn't mean it is a great looking day, right?
closed
If it
well,
was
yeah.
up, but it was well off its highs, that's not so great. But the travel stocks was an area that just seemed like it was gaining ground the entire day.
hmm Well, speaking of, let's take a look. Airbnb. This was one of the notable movers today, up 3.6% in some volume here, clearing resistance.
Yeah. So now keep in mind we have a shortened day, so
Yeah.
that volume percent change may be looking a little bit weaker, later on. But if you compared it to where we ended, it was really strong volume, and we cleared this 130 area. I mean, you see that there was the high at 130.85. There was one around 128. We cleared that, and this is something that's looking strong. Certainly, I have a little bit of a soft spot for it because we stayed at a really nice Airbnb on the Bila Fjord in Denmark, and it just so happens that this stock is also looking very interesting. This has been on our radar for a while,
Yeah.
and you see the relative strength. It's not at necessarily recent highs, but it seems like it's going in the right direction here. So clearing that area of resistance, this is something that does look actionable.
Yeah, we even have a handle identified on the weekly chart here, and it is squarely in that buy zone. We also want to take a look at Expedia. This is ticker EXPE. A strong move today for this one as well. Price wise, up over 3%. It's still within a handle, but arguably an early entry if you connect some of the highs there. On the verge of breaking out. Today, it closed some 6% above the 21 day, and with it 1% above the pivot. Seems like that 21 day would be right around that 8% loss cutting rule.
Yeah, so right now it says 1% to the pivot because it's
Hmm.
using that 114.37. But Ali, I like
Right.
I like what you did with your line because I think today did offer an early entry. You could either look at that line kind of downsloping, or even if you kind of just did a line straight across, it kind of hit two areas, um, right around there. So it's got a lot of different ways that you could kind of look at this as an entry point. And look, you've got more time that's been spent above the 200-day moving average line. You had between
Mhm.
March and May, where it was spending time back below the 200-day line, and that was a 30% correction for the cup. But now we've got the handle at just a 10% correction. So I like when things get tighter as they go along. That's positive, especially the tightness on the right hand side of the chart. So this is another one that's looking pretty strong. Earnings growth, it did have an NA this last quarter. That's not something that is unusual right now, but overall, the numbers look strong in terms of the estimates. The revenue, it did decelerate a little bit, but it looks like it could be ramping up. So that's something to keep an eye on. And we're not just seeing Expedia, you're also seeing like Booking, BKNG, and again, this whole travel theme that's looking pretty good. So it's not alone.
Hmm. And last but not least, let's take a look at Visa because when you're traveling, you have to pay for all of those fun experiences. And when you're booking your travel, of course. And Visa with a strong move last Thursday, it was our stock of the day and now in a breakout zone.
Yeah. So, and again, the reason why this came on my radar was because where did it close in the range? And this was one that was trading. Both Visa and MasterCard were on that screen of mine where I looked for things that were in the upper part of their range. So they both look very similar. This is kind of cleared an area. I do, again, like the early entry that you pointed out. It was so strong on Thursday with some volume behind it. It wasn't necessarily hugely above average, but it was certainly above the most recent action. And a lot of times that's good enough for me.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Justin, for breaking all of that down. Welcome back once
Thanks,
again.
Allie.
Good to have you back. And that is it for today. We will see you back in the morning on Wednesday because it's the July 4th holiday tomorrow. But Wednesday morning, IBD Live. We'll see you there, investors.com/IBD Live for the details. David Ryan is going to be joining us on our Wednesday show since tomorrow is a holiday. So we have that to look forward to. Thanks so much once again for watching, and we'll see you Wednesday. Happy 4th.